just a list of some of the themes that you're going to notice in Notes from Underground are the following. So the first I've talked about before, the clash between our capacity to reason and our free will, or what Dostoevsky refers to sometimes as the wanting. It's a big thing. We'll talk a lot about the conscious and the hyper consciousness that the underground man experiences. The whole of the novel is basically a critique of rational self-interest, right? So the idea that because man is rational, he always knows what's right for him. And we'll finally notice the theme of human nature and what humans are actually like, because Dostoevsky has a theory about this too. I'll just talk a little bit about the structure of the novel, because this one can be kind of weird. So when you look at it the first time, first and foremost, the novel was originally called Confession, and Dostoevsky changed the name of it before he changed the title before he published it. There are two parts to this, two distinct parts, and so part one takes place in the present time, I guess. So the 1860s. The protagonist is 40, and we generally agree that the underground man is speaking for Dostoevsky here. So if I ever flip back and forth and say Dostoevsky says this when it's the underground man talking, that's okay. There's no plot in part one, which you might notice when you pick up the novel and you start reading, and it's like, hey, it's just some guy basically yelling the entire time. Part one is an attack on Western rationalism, and so the gentleman that he's talking to, these are the intellectuals of the 1860s. They're the Westernizers, right? So he's attacking their perspective. Part two, on the other hand, is a flashback. So this is our narrator telling us about a series of events that happened to him when he was 24. Now, in part two, there is kind of a plot structure. It's a loose one, but just like we talked about with Frankenstein, it's told through the lens of an unreliable narrator, because it is a flashback. So, and we also don't know how sane this person is, so that's an issue too. So I keep referring to the underground man as the underground man. He doesn't have a name. We don't know what his name is. Dostoevsky purposefully doesn't name him, because he's supposed to represent everybody and nobody at the same time. He is the westernized man, and that's why he's sick, right? He's sick because he has gone through this process of, abandoning traditional Russian values and embracing Western values, and it just doesn't work, right? So Dostoevsky is illustrating how Western thought can turn us into basically crazy people. So he tells us right up front, I'm a sick man, I'm a wicked man. I'm not just wicked. I never managed to become anything, neither wicked nor good, neither a scoundrel nor an honest man, neither a hero nor an insect. The underground man is a mess of contradictions, right? He is this and he is not this. He is, the idea here is that man is a mess of contradictions. We are what some people have referred to as homo contradictus, right? This bundle of emotions and rational thought, and those things can't exactly work together. One way of looking at the underground man is by asking yourself if he's a hero, or rather an anti-hero, right? Because he doesn't fit sort of the traditional parameters of a hero. And it's okay to look at him this way if you want to. And if you do, a couple of things you should ask yourself are whether he has an agenda, or clearly defined goal, and whether he needs one. So think about what it means to be an anti-hero. So I've got the Punisher up here, and I've got Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver as examples. I mean, another way of looking at this novel, and it tends to be the way that I look at it, because I think this is the way that Dostoevsky wants us to see him, is that he's ill, right? He's, that this is a novel about mental illness, not about, like some kind of DSM-5, schizophrenia or something like that, but this is the illness that society has, given us. So it goes back to Rousseau, right? Most of our ills are of our own making. So the underground man has been made sick by Western values and too much rationalism and too much of this society. But the thing to understand also is that the illness that he experiences is not just wholly mental, because he has physical manifestations of sickness as well. That's the pain that he experiences in his liver, his toothache, and stuff like that. So I'll come back to the toothache a little later. But so I said that this whole novel is just this critique of enlightened self-interest. And what is really being attacked here is the idea that because humans are rational creatures, that we know what's best for us and we always do what's best for us. We don't. All the time, actually. Even though we know what the right thing to do is, or the best thing to do is, we do the opposite of it. So, if I'm training for a 5K or something, and in the morning I'm like, well, I have two choices. I can run or I can eat a box of donuts. Well, I know that the right thing to do is run, right? I've got to practice. I've got to train. But I eat the box of donuts instead because I'm in a crappy mood that day or something. So we do know what's best for us, but we don't always do what's best for us. And this is what Dostoevsky means when he has the underground man say, tell me, who first announced that man does dirty, and that means that he does what's wrong for him, only because he doesn't know his real interests. And if he were to be enlightened about his own interests, he would do the right thing. He would immediately become good and noble because he would understand what was profitable for him. Who is it that told us that once we knew what was good for us, we would actually do what was good for us? The underground man says, that's ludicrous. We do what's wrong for us all the time. Now here's the problem with the underground man. He should be normal. He should be a perfectly normal person because he's had this Western education, he has a civil service job, all of these Western ideals have been pushed on him since he was a child, so he should have grown up to be this rational, self-interested, modern human. But he's not. He's crazy. He constantly does things that are not within the realm of his self-interest, so he's become totally irrational. So I have a picture here of Christian Bale's character from American Psycho, if you've ever seen that movie. It's a movie where you have this guy who's like the model of what the successful man is supposed to be in America in the 1990s. But he went to the right school, he has the perfect job, but he may or may not be killing women in the middle of the night. So the idea then is that no matter how we train ourselves and force ourselves to fit into some kind of mold, we just aren't like that. And the underground man is trying to show us that we are all just like him, just like the underground man. Indeed, if we are to be said to have any free will at all, we have to have the opportunity to behave irrationally. So to understand what that means, we have to look back at this idea of a rational utopia, where we all know what's in our best interest, we all do what's in our best interest. If that's true, if we could inhabit this world, this rational utopia, would we be able to be said to have any free will at all? Because if we can only ever do what's rational for us, and only ever do the right thing, it's like we're slaves to reason. It's like we don't have a choice. So if I'm training for the 5K and all I could ever do was train and not eat the box of donuts, I wouldn't be said to have any free will at all. And that's what Dostoevsky is really criticizing here. Like, the idea of reason being the most important thing that humans are supposed to model themselves after, these rational individuals, doesn't give us any free will. It takes it all away from us. So, and Dostoevsky says that's what actually makes us human, our capacity for free will. We can't have free will if we always act according to the dictates of reason. So anytime you see a mathematical metaphor in Notes from Underground, he's talking about that rational utopia, mathematical, perfectly reasonable, hey, 2 + 2 always equals 4. Why can't it equal 5? The thing to understand, though, is that even though the underground man is criticizing the Enlightenment values and criticizing reason, he's also not a romantic, because he mocks romantic intellectualism and individualism, and whenever he talks about this quest that he's on for the sublime and the beautiful, he's actually making fun of romanticism. So he's not endorsing the romantic perspective over the Enlightenment perspective. He's making fun of all of it. I'll come back to this, but the problem he has with romanticism is that the romantics are looking for the secular sublime and the beautiful, and he actually thinks that they should be looking for the divine sublime and beautiful. Alright, so I'll stop this one here, and then I'll start talking about the hyper consciousness next.